about to hear a story. It defines a boundary that was violently crossed. This isn't about a simple ghost. This is about a shadow of war that refused to die. It followed a combat veteran named Leo home. This entity is the physical shape of his deepest fear. 5 years of small talk, therapy sessions, and forcing smiles for photos that never looked right. The gunfire stopped, but the noise never did, it just changed shape. It started with dreams, flashes of smoke, the crack of gunfire, shadows crawling just outside the light, but then the dreams followed him into daylight. Faces in crowds seemed too familiar. Shadows moved when nothing else did. He told himself it was exhaustion, until they started whispering his name. Not in his head, from the corners of empty rooms, from the dark beneath his bed, from somewhere that remembered him, even after the war forgot. Leo drove for hours. He found a remote hotel. He locked the door. He thought he was safe. Then his wife called. Her panic revealed a chilling truth. Some demons do not need an invitation. They only need your fear. Turn down the lights. Put on your headphones. Now, listen closely. The fight is finally over. The real terror has just begun. The evening air hung heavy with unspoken dread as Leo's hands trembled over his phone, leaving a message that would change everything. His voice cracked with urgency. Stay away from the house. Whatever you do, don't go in the kitchen and don't call the cops. The words spilled out in a desperate torrent, a warning wrapped in apology. He promised he'd be okay tonight, that he'd explain tomorrow, but the fear threading through his voice suggested otherwise. Leo found himself standing before a modest hotel desk, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like restless insects. The clerk, a young man with practiced courtesy, greeted him with professional warmth. Leo's request was simple, a room for one night, preferably on a higher floor. The price made him wince, but he handed over the cash without argument. When asked for identification, Leo hesitated. He wasn't used to hotels with their security protocols and paper trails. Motels never asked questions. The clerk explained patiently about policies and security, and Leo relented, though his discomfort was palpable. "You don't have a rat problem, do you?" Leo asked, the question seeming to carry more weight than mere concern about vermin. The clerk assured him they did not, and Leo signed the register with visible relief. Key in hand, he disappeared toward his room, the weight of something unseen pressing down on his shoulders. The hotel room was sterile and impersonal, exactly what Leo needed. He fumbled with the thermostat, muttering about the heat, trying to create normalcy in a situation that was anything but normal. Then his phone rang. Clara's voice cut through the silence, confused and irritated by his cryptic message. She'd just pulled into their driveway. "You're home? You've got to leave," Leo pleaded, panic rising in his throat. But Clara was tired, unwilling to impose on their children at this late hour. She needed to use the bathroom. Leo's instructions became more urgent. Head straight to the bathroom and don't go anywhere else. Then came the question that stopped time. Who's lying in our kitchen? Leo's story tumbled out in fragments. A man had come to their door distressed, claiming someone was following him. Leo had let him in and promised to call the police. But then the window shattered and Leo saw what had broken through the glass, something that wasn't the first time he'd encountered it. The confession came slowly, painfully. During his deployment overseas, Leo had seen things in the chaos of combat, shadows moving through smoke and gunfire, shapes that his fellow soldiers never seemed to notice. His lieutenant had warned him to stay quiet about it. "War will drive a man mad," the officer had said. Leo had tried to convince himself it was imagination, the stress of battle playing tricks on his mind. But in the medical tents at night, he'd heard them scurrying, seen their shadows dancing on canvas walls in the lamplight. They appeared when death was near, lingering around bodies awaiting evacuation. When the fighting stopped, they would disappear, all except one. That one had been different, moving between his squad mates with an awareness that chilled him to his core. It looked at him, acknowledged him, while remaining invisible to everyone else. Leo thought he'd left it all behind when he came home from the war. Years had passed without incident, until tonight, when he'd opened his door to a desperate stranger and invited the darkness back in. Clara's voice softened with understanding and fear. "Wherever you are right now, stay safe, please." Leo assured her he would be fine. He'd driven far, used a full tank of gas to reach this anonymous hotel. The distance had to be enough. They exchanged "I love yous," words that felt both routine and precious, and ended the call. The hotel settled into its nighttime rhythm, but peace remained elusive. In the hallway, Leo encountered another guest, a man who asked about noise coming from the room across from Leo's, room 2020. The hotel staff member who responded to the complaint entered the room to investigate. What he found sent him stumbling back into the corridor, desperate for help, calling for someone to phone an ambulance. His pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears, met with indifference or perhaps something worse, an inability to hear or respond. The night stretched on, punctuated by the mundane intrusion of automated hotel announcements about unavailable room service and breakfast hours. But beneath the ordinary surface, something prowled the corridors. Leo moved through the hotel's dim passages, disoriented, searching. Another guest asked directions to the bathroom, and a weary staff member agreed to show the way before clocking out, leading them both deeper into the building's labyrinthine interior. The heat became oppressive, stifling. Leo heard himself muttering about it again, as if the temperature were the only problem he faced. But the real heat came from something else, burning certainty that distance and locked doors wouldn't be enough. The thing that had followed him from war, that had waited patiently through years of peace, had found him again. And now, in this anonymous hotel that was supposed to be sanctuary, Leo understood a terrible truth. Some things don't need an invitation to enter. Some things simply follow, patient and inevitable, waiting for the moment when the distance runs out and there's nowhere left to run. As the night deepened, the hotel's walls seemed to close in, and somewhere in the darkness, shadows moved with purpose, dancing to a rhythm moan they could hear. The fluorescent lights in the hallway flickered with an irregular pulse, casting the corridor in alternating moments of harsh brightness and shadow. Leo pressed his back against the wall, his breath coming in short, controlled bursts, kind of breathing he'd learned in combat, the kind meant to keep panic at bay. The staff member who'd been showing the lost guest to the bathroom had vanished. One moment he was there, pointing down the corridor with a tired gesture, and the next, nothing. Just an empty hallway and the echo of footsteps that might have been Leo's own. Leo's room key felt heavy in his pocket, a small metal anchor to reality. He could return to room 2020, lock the door, push furniture against it, and wait for dawn. That's what a rational person would do. But Leo had learned long ago that rationality had limits, that there were things in the world that didn't respect locked doors or daylight. He thought of Clara, alone in their house with a dead man in the kitchen, and something else, something worse, that had shattered their window to get inside. He should never have left her. But what choice did he have? If he'd stayed, if that thing had caught both of them there. His phone buzzed, a text from Clara. "It's still here, in the kitchen, not moving, just watching the hallway where our bedroom is. I'm locked in the bathroom. Leo, what do I do?" Leo's fingers trembled as he typed back, "Stay there. Keep the door locked. I'm coming home." But even as he sent the message, he knew it was a lie. He couldn't go home, not yet, because the thing that had followed him from the war hadn't stayed at his house. It had followed him here, to this hotel, and if he led it back to Clara, she'd have no chance at all. The hotel lobby was empty when Leo descended the stairs. The young clerk from earlier was gone, replaced by no one. The desk sat abandoned, the computer screen glowing with some idle screensaver. Leo approached slowly, his combat instincts screaming at him that empty spaces were the most dangerous kind. Behind the desk, he found what he was looking for, guest registry. His hands moved quickly, flipping through pages, looking for any pattern, any clue. What he found made his blood run cold. Room 229, room where the staff member had found someone in distress, had been checked out since last Tuesday. The entry was marked with a red stamp, "Do not rent. Maintenance required." Room 220 Hans' own room showed no current guest. The last entry was from 3 weeks ago, a name he didn't recognize, with a notation in the margin, "Guest reported disturbances. Checked out early. No refund was issued." Room 221, where the man had complained about noise, was also listed as vacant. Leo's mind raced. If these rooms were empty, then who had he been talking to in the hallway? Who had the clerk been responding to when he went to investigate room 220 Han? The realization hit him like physical force. The hotel wasn't empty because it was slow season. It was empty because something had driven everyone else away, and he'd walked right into its territory. A sound from the second floor drew his attention, a rhythmic scraping, like something heavy being dragged across carpet. Leo moved toward the stairs, every instinct telling him to run, but his feet carried him forward. He'd spent too many years running from this thing, and running had only prolonged the inevitable. The second floor hallway stretched before him, longer than it should have been, as if the building itself had grown in the darkness. The scraping sound grew louder, and with it came a smell, cordite and copper, the scent of battlefields and field hospitals, of death waiting patiently for collection. At the end of the hall, he saw it. The shadow wasn't cast by anything. It existed independently, a darkness that moved with purpose and intelligence. It was roughly man-shaped, but wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. Too many joints in its limbs, a head that tilted at angles no spine could support, movements that were simultaneously fluid and jerking, like a film with random frames removed. But the worst part was that it was familiar. This was the one that had watched him in the medical tent, the one that had moved between his squad mates while staring directly at him, the one that acknowledged him. "I know what you are," Leo said, his voice steady despite the fear flooding his system. "You're death, or you're what comes before it. You're the warning." The shadow didn't respond, but it stopped moving. In the silence, Leo heard something else, breathing that wasn't his own, coming from multiple directions. The hallway was no longer empty. Shapes emerged from doorways that had been closed moments before, translucent figures that flickered in and out of visibility. The hotel staff member who'd gone to check room 2009, the guest who'd asked about bathroom directions, others Leo hadn't seen, a woman in a nightgown, an elderly man with a suitcase, a child holding a teddy bear. All of them had the same empty expressions, the same absent quality, as if they were present but not quite real. And all of them were watching the shadow at the end of the hall. "They're the ones who didn't get away," Leo whispered, understanding flooding through him. "The ones who saw you and didn't have enough distance, enough fight, enough." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. His phone buzzed again. Clara. "Leo, it moved. It's at the bathroom door. I can see its shadow underneath. Please, I need you to tell me what to do." Leo closed his eyes, forcing himself to think through the terror. The thing at his house and the thing at the hotel, they were the same somehow, or they were connected, two manifestations of the same presence. It had split itself, followed him and stayed with Clara, ensuring that no matter what he did, someone would be caught. Unless... "You can't be in two places at once," Leo said to the shadow. "You're here or you're there, but not both." "Not really. One of them has to be a projection, a fear given shape. The question is, which one?" The shadow moved closer, and Leo felt his courage wavering. But then something occurred to him, something the shadow had done differently this time that it had never done before. It had knocked that man at his door, distressed and asking for help, claiming someone was following him. The shadow had never done that before. It had never used bait, never manipulated Leo into opening his door, which meant it had learned. Or it had become desperate. "You're getting weaker," Leo said, the realization giving him strength. "That's why you needed me to invite someone in. That's why you had to break the window instead of just appearing. You're not as strong as you used to be." The shadow paused, and for the first time Leo sensed something from it. Not emotion exactly, but acknowledgement, a confirmation. The distance did work. Leo continued, his mind racing through the implications. "When I came home, when I stopped running from the memories, you faded. You were almost gone. Until I let fear back in, until I opened that door." Leo pulled out his phone and called Clara. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with panic. "Leo, it's trying to get in." "It can't," Leo interrupted. "Listen to me, Clara. It's not real. Not the way you think. It's fear. My fear, given shape by something I don't fully understand, but it only has the power I give it. That doesn't make it any less terrifying, I know. But here's what I need you to do. Turn on all the lights, every single one in the house. Then I need you to open that bathroom door." "Are you insane?" "I'm not. Trust me, please. It can't hurt you because it's not really there. It's here, with me, and I'm going to end this." Leo heard Clara's shaky breathing through the phone, heard her moving, the click of light switches. Then, after a moment of silence, her voice came back, stronger. "Leo, there's nothing here. The hallway's empty. The thing in the kitchen, it's gone too. There's still a body, but the other thing, it's not here." "Because it's all here," Leo said, looking at the shadow that had been his companion and tormentor for so many years. "It followed me, and now it's time to put it to rest." He took a step forward, toward the shadow instead of away from it. The flickering forms in the doorways grew more agitated, but Leo kept walking. "I spent years afraid of you," he said. "Afraid of what you represented. Death coming, inevitable and patient. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I'm not in that war anymore. Those firefights are over. Those bodies in the medical tent, they're long buried, and I'm still here, still alive." Another step. The shadow seemed less solid now, its edges bleeding into the surrounding darkness. "You're a ghost," Leo continued. "Not of a person, but of a tie, a place, a version of me that died overseas but somehow kept walking around after I came home. And I'm done carrying you." The shadow reached for him, and Leo didn't flinch. Its touch was cold, like the desert nights he remembered, like the fear that had gripped him every time the fighting started. But it was also insubstantial, passing through him rather than grabbing him. "You can't hold on to someone who lets you go," Leo whispered. The hotel hallway flooded with light, real light, morning sun streaming through windows that Leo hadn't noticed before. The shadow dissipated like smoke, and with it, the flickering forms in the doorways faded until only Leo remained, standing alone in an empty corridor. Behind him, footsteps on the stairs. Leo turned to see the young clerk from the front desk, looking confused and carrying a cup of coffee. "Sir, is everything all right? I heard someone talking out here. It's only 6 a.m. Quiet hours don't end until 7. Leo looked around the hallway, seeing it clearly for the first time. It was just a hallway, dated carpet, scuffed walls, the lingering smell of industrial cleaner. Room 298's door hung slightly open, and through it, Leo could see renovation equipment and paint supplies. "I'm fine," Leo said, and realized he meant it. I couldn't sleep. Bad dreams." "Yeah, I get that," the clerk said sympathetically. "Are you checking out this morning?" "Yeah, I think I'm going home." Leo called Clara from the parking lot as the sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of night. She answered immediately, her voice exhausted but relieved. "There's police here now," she said. "I had to call them about the body. I told them a man forced his way in, that you chased him off before you left for the night, and when I came home, I found him dead in the kitchen. They're treating it as a home invasion gone wrong." "And the window?" "I told them he broke it by getting in. They're not asking too many questions. I think they just want to close the case." Leo leaned against his car, feeling the weight of the night lifting from his shoulders. "I'm sorry I left you alone with that. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really just running, again." "You came back," Clara said softly. "That's what matters. Are you okay?" Leo thought about the question. Was he okay? He'd spent years haunted by something he didn't understand, had let fear dictate his actions, had almost let it cost him everything. But he'd also faced it, finally, and found it was smaller than he'd imagined. Not powerless, but not omnipotent either. "I think I will be," he said. "I'm coming home now. The real me this time, not the one still fighting a war that ended years ago. I'll be here." Clara promised. "We'll figure out the rest together." Leo ended the call and stood for a moment in the hotel parking lot, watching the morning traffic begin to build on the nearby highway. Ordinary people going to ordinary places, living lives unburdened by shadows from the past. He could be one of them again. He could go home, help his wife deal with the aftermath of last night's tragedy, and begin the work of truly leaving the war behind. Not by running from the memories, but by accepting them as part of his history rather than his present. As he climbed into his car, Leo glanced back at the hotel one last time. In a second-floor window, he thought he saw movement, a flicker of darkness against the morning light. But when he looked again, there was nothing there. Maybe it was gone for good. Maybe it would always be there, a shadow at the edge of his vision, a reminder of the things he'd seen and survived. Either way, Leo realized it no longer had the power to send him running. He started the engine and pulled onto the highway, heading home toward his wife, toward his life, toward a future unshackled from the weight of ghosts. The follower, at last, had been left behind. 3 months later, Leo sat in a therapist's office, finally telling someone the full story of what he'd experienced during his deployment. Not just the battles and the injuries, but the things he'd seen that didn't belong in any official report. The therapist listened without judgment, nodding at appropriate moments, taking careful notes. When Leo finished, the therapist set down her pen and looked at him with kind, understanding eyes. "What you're describing sounds like a combination of PTSD and what some researchers call combat-related anomalous experiences," she said. "Soldiers in high-stress situations sometimes report perceptions that don't fit conventional understanding, sensing death before it happens, seeing things others don't, feeling presences that may or may not be real." "Do you believe me?" Leo asked. The therapist smiled. "I believe you experienced something profound and terrifying. Whether it was a psychological manifestation of trauma or something beyond our current understanding doesn't really matter. What matters is that it was real to you and it was affecting your life. The fact that you found a way to reclaim your agency from it, that's what's important." Leo nodded slowly. It was the answer he'd needed to hear. Not validation that shadow creatures from another realm were stalking veterans, but acknowledgement that his experience was valid, that his fear had been real, and that his courage in facing it mattered. He left the session feeling lighter than he had in years. Outside, Clara waited in the car, ready to drive them both home to the house they'd deep cleaned and renovated, erasing the last physical traces of that terrible night. As they drove, Leo watched the world pass by his window. Trees and buildings, people and cars, all the ordinary components of an ordinary life. And for the first time since coming home from the war, ordinary felt like enough. The shadow might return someday. Trauma had a way of resurfacing when least expected. But if it did, Leo knew he wouldn't run. He'd face it, acknowledge it, and send it back to where it belonged. Not in his present, but in his past, where all ghosts eventually must go. And in the meantime, he would live. Really, truly lives